Welcome to GP Trainee Teaching Lockdown Learning Session 9. Today we're going to cover three topics: AKT stats, neurology for RCA, CSA, but also for AKT, and then a general GP careers questions and answers session. We can ask anything you like about GP careers after finishing training. Okay, so let's make a start. For those that haven't been before, very briefly, my name is Dr. Muhibur Rahman. I'm a portfolio GP based here in Birmingham and Solihull. I'm a medical director of eMedica, and I do a range of roles, both clinical and educational. And for those that have joined from the very first one, I can't believe that we're actually at the end of lockdown, if you like, and the last webinar. Just if we look back at the very first webinar, I think one of the ways I can track it personally is how my PP changed. Right at the beginning of this is what we had at a secure unit I work at for women with severe mental health. Most of them are sectioned, okay? And you can see it's just a really thin apron. I started buying my own. We had, these are like paper masks. I don't know what they're going to do. Then it went to, I had to do it myself. This is just a laminated sheet of laminating paper and my wife's sleeping mask. And I sort of used that to tie this laminated sheet. I thought it's better than nothing. Again, that's a paper mask, okay? Moving on to going back to scrubs after 15 years, I last was in scrubs when I used to do orthopedics before I was a GP, to someone that I trained many years ago, saw one of my posts and saw this pathetic PP I had here, and he's working in a place that they had lots of PP. So he donated, he sent me this proper FFP3 mask, a proper visor, surgical kit, everything, okay? To now my workplace has brought in full hazmat suits and everything, okay? So, but I tell you what, it is so hot when you're in one of these with an FFP3 mask doing a full clinic. Let me tell you, you're just sweating buckets, okay? So anyway, let's move on to the webinar format. Welcome back to all of you that have been to any of the previous ones. Welcome to those that are joining for the first time. So today what we're going to do, we're going to do teaching on three topics. It's going to be very interactive with the questions and the cases, so do join in when the chat is open. Just a brief update for MRCGP exams. So AKT, for the July 15th AKT, bookings are closed. So if you book that, you've got just over 3 weeks left. So you really need to knuckle down now and just, every single day you should be doing some questions. You should be doing a lot of mocks in the last couple of weeks. Revise your stats, revise your admin. For those sitting August 19th, the bookings will be from the 7th to the 10th, and there's 1,500 spaces available. So essentially, as long as you want to sit it and you're in ST2 or ST3, you'll be able to sit. 1,500 spaces is plenty. And then October 28th is the next AKT. That's the normal schedule and the normal eligibility. So anyone in ST2 should be able to sit that. The CSA replacement, RCA, is likely to run until about August 2021. So those of you that are planning to sit CSA, for example, October, November, December, early next year, you probably need to now start thinking about RCA. Okay, so you're going to record 13 different consultations, either audio or video or face-to-face or a mixture of these. The first cohort, those of you submitting for the June-July exam, you've got to submit by Sunday. So hopefully by now, you've recorded as many as you're going to record, so that tomorrow and Saturday, you're just picking which ones that you want to submit rather than trying to record anything new tomorrow. Key message, keep up your hard work. Keep it going. Okay, so the program today, AKT stats, neurology, and then a GP careers Q&A. So in terms of stats, remember stats is 10% of the AKT exam. It's just 20 questions, but if you can do really well in stats, if you can get yourself 80% plus in stats and 80% plus in the admin domain, which if you learn these things, they're relatively easy marks. Now you can get away with a 70% in clinical. If you don't get 80% in stats and admin, you probably need about 75% in clinical, which is a lot more difficult to achieve, okay? And even if you get 100% in stats and 100% in admin, you still need to do reasonably well in clinical because that's the biggest domain. So there's three big areas where questions are drawn from in the statistics domain. So there's some questions that will be about testing your knowledge of different statistical terms and their definitions. Some will involve you doing calculations. Some will involve understanding principles of statistics and when to apply certain tests, for example. Then there's questions that involve interpreting graphs, charts, or just interpreting data that you might see from things like public health data and things like that. And finally, types of study and research methods. These are the last kind of areas, okay? So you do have an on-screen calculator that you can use in the real exam. So today, please use the calculator on your phone or something like that on your computer if you want to use it for some of the questions. So we're going to go straight into a question. Get your calculators ready for this one. And what I'll do is I'll put the question up. I will give you about 55 seconds or so to have a go at it, and then I'll launch a poll. So I'm just going to turn the public chat off so no one pops the answer while other people are thinking of it, okay? And I'm going to put the poll on in a minute, okay? Yeah, okay, so let's put the question on. What we can see in the poll is that the most popular, first of all, big spread. Every single option has been picked, A to E. And that's because we know that people struggle with stats. That's one of the reasons I wanted to specifically cover it, okay? But it's actually fairly evenly spread. The two really popular answers were B and C, so 0.369 and 3.69. These are the two really popular answers. After that, it was D and then A. And E. Okay, so the most popular answers though are B and C. Okay, so 0.369 and 3.69. Okay, so this question is asking about incidence of chlamydia. So the first thing before we look at the actual answer is to make sure you read the right chart. So for example, you can see there's data on chlamydia, there's data on gonorrhea. Okay, and then it says in 2017. So look, we've got 2017 data here, 2018 data. Sometimes people just look on the wrong column. Okay, and they'll often get the answer wrong because of that. In this case, 2017, again, we've got data on male, female. We've got data on specialist sexual health services like gum clinics, okay? On non-specialist sexual health services, level 1 and 2. Like our practice, we do a lot of sexual health, but we're not considered a specialist sexual health. We don't have all the facilities to do everything, but we do near patient testing for HIV, for gonorrhea, for chlamydia. We do testing for syphilis. We send off blood for herpes tests and things like that. So we consider a non-specialist SHS, okay? But not up here. So the question's asking for what is the incidence of chlamydia per 100,000 people? You see, it doesn't say in women, it doesn't say in men, it doesn't say in specialist services. It just means you've got to read the total. So the total for chlamydia was 205,365 cases if we add male and female in 2017. Incidence is the number of new cases out of the whole population. So that's the new cases. That's the whole population. But look at this, it asks per 100,000. That's because actually that is the way that Public Health England, and this is data from Public Health England, that's how they actually give out their data on STI. Every year they publish a report on different STIs, and they say what is the incidence per 100,000. Okay, that's why we've used that in the question, because it's what you should be used to reading if you've actually looked at that data. So the correct answer is E, 369 people per 100,000. Now, quite a few of you that got one of the other answers. The reason you've got it wrong is that what you've calculated is you've calculated the percentage incidence. So this is a good example of why knowledge is important, but so is exam technique. That if you had read carefully that it asked per 100,000, when you're calculating a percentage, you're calculating it per 100, okay? But they didn't ask you per 100, they asked you per 100,000. That's a slightly different calculation, isn't it? And so that's why you would have got it wrong, okay? So let's go through the calculation, okay? So incidence is new cases divided by the total population. So new cases is 205,365. I've read that off here. Divided by the total population in that year was 55,619,400. This is actual data from Public Health England. This is real data I collected. Okay. If we do that calculation, that's 0.00369. Okay. Now, if you multiply that by 100, you'd get 0.369%. So those of you that picked B, if it asked you the percentage incidence, you would have been right. But it didn't ask you that, so you're not right. You wouldn't get a mark for it. Okay. Now, if they ask you per 100,000, what you need to do is you need to take this number and multiply by 100,000. So 0.00369 times 100,000 is 369 people per 100,000. Okay, so that's the incidence of chlamydia that actually happened in 2017. As a percentage, that's 0.369%. Okay, so less than 0.5% is the incidence. Remember, incidence is number of new cases. Prevalence is number of new cases plus all the existing cases out of the total population, because sometimes you'll be asked to calculate prevalence rather than incidence. Okay, so incidence is rate of new cases of a disease. So we can either report it as a percentage, or it's quite common to give it as a proportion of the population, per 100,000, per 1,000, per 10,000. Usually we either give it per 1,000 or per 100,000. These are common ones, okay? And usually you give it over a time period, in a year, okay? So for example, 1% per year is 1 in 100 per year. 2 per 100,000 per year is the same as 0.002%. You see, often when it's something where the number is less than 1 in 100, the reason they give it as a whole number per 100,000, people can understand whole numbers. Understanding 0.002% per year, that's difficult for a lot of people to understand. Do you see? Okay. So all you do to calculate it, new cases divided by the total population, to get a percentage, multiply by 100. If it doesn't ask for a percentage, if it asks for per 100,000, per 10,000, whatever amount, that's n. Okay, so per n. So if it's per 100,000, multiply by 100,000. Per 1,000, multiply by 1,000. Per 10,000, multiply by 10,000. That will give you the rate per 1,000, 10,000, million, whatever you want to look into. Okay, so incidence is one of the things you need to know how to calculate. Okay, so just to show you again, you can see total number of new cases, 205,365. out of the total population, multiplied by 100,000 gives you 369. Whereas if you multiplied by 100, you'd get 0.369, which is the percentage incidence. You see, that's difficult for a lot of people to understand, 0.369%. So some of the other calculations that you need to learn how to be able to do confidently, so as well as incidence, prevalence, different types of average, mean, median, mode, when to use them, what they mean, how to calculate them, sensitivity, specificity, which is used to look at accuracy of tests, the post-test probability, so positive predictive value and negative predictive value, i.e. if you've got a positive test, what's the likelihood you actually have the disease? Okay, if you've got a negative test, what's the likelihood you actually don't have the disease? Risk, so different types of risk, absolute risk, relative risk, absolute risk reduction, absolute risk increase, relative risk reduction, numbers needed to treat, numbers needed to harm, what they mean and how to calculate them, odds and odds ratio, and then how to calculate and interpret QALYs and DALYs. So QALYs, quality adjusted life years, DALYs, disability adjusted life years. Okay, let's do another question on data interpretation. Okay, so that's time. I'm going to put on the chat now. Feel free to type your answer. Now, this is an example of what we call a free text question. So in the AKT, some questions don't have options for you to pick from. You might get a few questions where it's like this as a box. You type your answer. So type your answer. Okay, you've had your time. Feel free to type your answer. Okay, so put that into the chat. I'll give a minute or so for everyone to put their answer so I can see what people think. All right, and then we'll have a look. Again, this is real data that I got from Public Health England. There's a website called Public Health Profiles or fingertips.phe. You can look at all kinds of different health data. Okay, and the nice thing about this type of question where it's data gathering, data interpretation, there's no calculations. It's just getting familiar with health data and being able to interpret it. So they're actually quite easy if you get familiar with this type of data. Okay, so a lot of people have said Sandwell, but a few people have also given a couple of other areas. Okay, but most people have picked Sandwell. Okay, some people have said Birmingham, and so on. Okay, so the right answer is Sandwell. Okay, unfortunately, they had the highest infant mortality rate. Okay, and the way that we look at this, you see this is the count. The count is the number of actual infant deaths, okay, between 2016 and 18. So for example, those people that pick Birmingham, they might have just seen that that's the highest number. Okay, let me get the smaller thing up there. That the 1,216 is the highest number. But of course, Birmingham has a population of more than a 1.5 million, something like that, people. Okay, so 1,206 as a rate might not be that high. You see, some of these places like Solihull is much smaller than Birmingham, right? I live in Solihull. I work in Birmingham. Herefordshire, big area, but in terms of population, it's quite small. It's a lot more rural. Okay, I did orthopedics back there a long time ago. Okay, about 18 odd years ago. Really nice place. Okay, and so what we're looking at, you see here, crude rate per thousand, i.e., infant mortality rate per thousand. That's this bit here, the value. And so you look at the bars. Let me put this back to this. The first thing is just to look at the bars, right? And you can see that these bars here, these red ones, most of them are a lot bigger than the yellow ones. So if you look at the yellow ones, really the ones that are small, okay, are down here, and the ones that are big are the red ones up here. So all the yellow ones, they're small, i.e. they're lower infant mortality. They're not going to have the highest rate. So we can ignore all the yellow ones. So you can see now we're narrowing down what we need to look at. So we just need to look at these, and there's just a couple that are close, okay? So you can see that Stoke-on-Trent is quite big. You can see that Staffordshire is quite big. Birmingham is up there, but look, this one stands out by a long margin, okay? It's Sandwell. Sandwell had 8.2 deaths per thousand in terms of infant mortality, i.e. babies that died, okay? So 8.2, and you can see that's the highest number that's listed here. The second highest, what's the second highest? Just read off the data. That's a bit harder because there's a few red bars that look very similar in size. This is where you'd actually read the value. What's the second highest infant mortality? Which area was that? So you can see the second highest is here. Stoke-on-Trent is 7.5. Okay. Okay. So and someone asked about the website. It's just here, fingertips.phe.org.uk. You can have a look at lots of different types of health data. So the good thing about this type of question is it's literally just reading off the chart. Okay. It's not Birmingham. Birmingham is 7.4. See, the bar looks very similar in size to Stoke-on-Trent. This is where you actually read the data. 7.5 here, 7.4 here. Okay. Here's another example. Okay. This is data on Yorkshire. Okay, Yorkshire and the Humber region, some of the areas in there. And so they might ask you to interpret some data here. Don't need to calculate anything. They might just ask you to interpret. So let me give you an example. We actually use this for those that attended the RCGP half-day masterclass that I did with the Royal College. We did a question based on this. So let me give you a question. Okay, from this data, can you tell me which area had the highest cardiovascular mortality rate amongst men? Okay. So can anyone suggest which area had the highest cardiovascular mortality rate amongst men? Okay. So the first thing is, you can see, again, just reading, this is mortality rate from all causes. We don't want to look at that. We want to look at cardiovascular deaths only. This is persons, that means male and female. This is male, this is female. So if we're looking at male, we just want to look at this line. So we look at this line, the highest rate of cardiovascular mortality for men, okay, is going to be the one with the highest number. So in this case, it's going to be Kingston upon Hill, okay? Whereas like here, if we wanted to look at the highest cardiovascular mortality rate for women under 75, what would that be? For women under 75? You see, in a lot of things, Kingston upon Hill has the highest mortality rates. But if you look at specifically the subset of women under 75 for cardiovascular deaths, if you look, Kingston upon Hill is 65.2, Bradford is 65.6. So Bradford has the highest cardiovascular mortality rate for women, Kingston upon Hill for men. So you see, you could have questions asking you things like that. It's literally just learning to interpret the data. Again, it's from that same website. So it's worth just exploring and learning how to look at different types of data. Okay. So some of the different types of data that you might need to get familiar with, prescribing data. So you might see, for example, different practices in a region, which ones have high benzodiazepine prescribing rates, which ones have high antibiotic prescribing rates, which one have high Z drug, i.e. zolpidem, zopiclone, sleeping drug prescribing rates, as a way to compare how you're doing compared to others. You might look at regional disease incidence and prevalence. How is your town doing or your practice doing compared to others? Okay, you could look at it at a national level. Public health data on STIs, mortality rates for specific causes or all causes or infant mortality, and then interpreting sort of tables like this in research. Okay, let's have a look at another question. Okay, that's time. I'm just going to turn off the poll. Okay, so most people picked B, and then after that, C and D were quite popular, but B was by a huge margin. More than 40% of you picked B. Okay, that was like by long and away the winner. Okay, and this is an example of what we call a multiple best answer in the AKT. It's asking for two things, right? You have to get them both right to get the mark. If you get one right and one wrong, you won't get a mark. You don't get half a mark, for example. There are no half marks in AKT. You either get the mark or you get nothing. It's quite strict marking. So the correct answers are C and D. And so actually only about a fifth of you would have got a mark there, because only about a fifth of you picked both C and D. Because so many of you picked B, you would have got no mark, even though you might have got one of the others right. You don't get half marks. You have to get them both right in a multiple best answer. So a couple of things. A few people picked A, that the heaviest patient in this group weighs 52 kilograms. We don't have any data on weight. What we have data on is body mass index. Can you see? That's what was being measured here, body mass index in kilograms per meter squared. We don't have the actual weight. So, this patient here, their body mass index was 52, someone morbidly obese, okay? The one that most people picked, but is incorrect, is that the mean body mass index is 25. If you look at this here, it's because you looked at this line, and this line is 25, you're right. But this line is not the mean. This is called a box and whisker plot, or a box plot for short, okay? The line in the middle of the box in a box plot is the median, a different type of average, not the mean. The median is the value that's in the middle of an ordered list. It means that basically, if you put everyone's body mass index from lowest to highest, the person who's right in the middle, that's the median, okay? I.e. half the people are above them, half the people are below them. They're right in the middle, okay? Not the mean. The mean could be lower or higher than the median, okay? So that's why this is incorrect. It's not, the mean is not shown in a box plot. Only the median is shown by the line inside the box. Okay, and then option F, the median is 31. Well, 31, this is not the median. This is what's called the upper quartile, also known as the 75th centile. Okay, 75% of patients would have had a body mass index smaller than this. That's why D is correct. That 75% of patients, their body mass index would be lower than this value, which is 31. Okay. This is called the upper quartile, or the 75th centile, okay? The other one that's right, that there's one patient that had a significantly higher body mass index than the majority of other patients. Yeah, see this one, it's marked with a dot. That's one single patient's data, and it's marked with a dot because it's so far from the rest of the data, we consider this an outlier, and we don't include it in calculating the median and in calculating the rest of this data. Because sometimes you might have one particular patient in a group that is so much heavier than the rest, or so much lighter than the rest, that to include them in the data would skew the data. They're not representative of most of your other patients that you're interested in looking at. Because the whole point of getting data is that you want to be able to generalize it to the broader population. Okay, and so that's called an outlier because it's so far from the rest of the data. If you include it in the data, it would actually skew the data, and so we don't want to include it. So this is called a box and whisker plot. It's a nice way to quickly look at data and look at things like the highest use value. That's the top whisker, okay? So the highest use value is just over 40, BMI of just over 40 kilograms per meter squared, okay? The top part of the box is known as the upper quartile, or the 75th centile. 75% of all of the data will be a lower value than this, okay? The line inside the box is the median, which is the middle value in an ordered list, not the mean. The bottom of the box, this value here, this one over here, this is the lower quartile, or the 25th centile. 25% of the values will be lower than this figure. And then this is the lowest used value, okay? So this is the lowest, body mass index in this cohort. So you can see it's just over 18, probably about 18 and a half, okay? In this particular cohort, okay? This thing that 50% of patients were obese, the reason that we know that this is incorrect is if the median is 25, 50% of patients will weigh more than this, 50% of patients will weigh lower than this, okay? And look, so that means for this to be true, this line would have to be at 30. That means 50% are more than 30. Look, a lot of these patients that are heavier than this patient, they might be overweight but not obese. 26, 27, 28, 29, they're overweight but not obese. So that's why E is also incorrect, okay? So this is called a box and whisker plot. So some of the other graphs and charts that you need to learn how to analyze, interpret, and do calculations from. Forest plots, which is a visual way to represent a meta-analysis, a scatter plot, regression analysis, hazard ratios, also known as Kaplan-Meier survival plots, process control charts, Lebesgue plots for comparing two treatments, histograms, bar charts, which are different, funnel plots for looking for potential publication bias, okay? Let's do another question. And that's time. Okay, great. So this one, I'm really pleased to see, loads of you got this one right. So about 2/3 of you picked E, which is the right answer. Minus 2 standard deviations to plus 2 standard deviations gives you the 95% confidence interval, okay? A few people picked F, minus 3 to plus 3, that gives you the 99% confidence interval. And then the second most popular answer was D, minus 1 standard deviation to plus 1 standard deviation. That gives you the 68% confidence interval, which generally no one's interested in, okay? So where data follows a normal distribution curve, so this is a normal distribution curve, also known as a bell curve, okay? Then if you go 1 standard deviation above and below the mean, you get 2/3 of the data, the 68% confidence interval. It's just over 2/3, isn't it, okay? Usually what we're interested in is the 95% confidence interval. To get that, you go 2 standard deviations above and 2 standard deviations below the mean, okay? And sometimes we want the 99% confidence interval. If we want to be really, really confident, okay, then that's 3 standard deviations above and below the mean. A couple of other things. So sometimes you might have, like, this could be circled and they ask you, what does this symbol mean? So mu here is the mean. This is sigma, this is standard deviations. You can see this is mean plus 1 standard deviation, mean plus 2 standard deviations, mean plus 3 standard deviations, okay? And mean minus 1 standard deviation, mean minus 2 standard, and so on, okay? So that's a normal distribution. Okay, so some of the other statistical terms that you need to be familiar with, the p-value, and when is it statistically significant, and how to understand clinical significance, which is nothing to do with the p-value. Standard deviation, how to interpret it, confidence intervals, normal distribution, statistical versus clinical significance, the null hypothesis and when to reject it, type 1 and type 2 errors, bias, confounding variables, okay? And then the different types of studies, cohort studies, randomized control trials, case control studies, cross-sectional comparative studies, cross-sectional surveys, when to use them, and the hierarchy of evidence, okay? So these are all other things that you need to get yourself familiar with. If you want to cover all of these topics, all the graphs and charts, all the different calculations, statistical terms, then the easiest way you're going to find to do it is to come to our Statistics Made Simple webinar. In 3 and a bit hours, we cover all of this with worked examples like we've done. Okay, we've just gone through 3 or 4 questions. We'll go through 40 something on this webinar, okay, all with worked examples, right? So the next one is on Tuesday, the 21st of July. Okay, you can get to it here, okay. In fact, I'll just show you on our website as well. So here's our website, emedica.co.uk. This is the AKT section. So all of the webinars are here. The stats one's here. Okay, so Tuesday the 21st of July, 7:15 to 10:30 is the next one. But for example, if you're sitting in July, you could just click subscribe now and then pick whichever one you want, stats, admin, clinical, or we've got the bundle where you get all 3. Okay, just click that and you get instant access, and you can get access for a month, 2 months, a year, it's up to you. If you book to attend in July, you also get access for 1 month of the recording afterwards, free of charge. That's included. Okay, so that's a stats webinar. Okay, and then I'm also going to be doing for those of you that are sitting the AKT in July or August, I'm doing a free high yield revision webinar, just an hour and 15 minutes on the 1st of July. Okay, so Wednesday the 1st of July, 8 to 9:15 p.m. Okay, so please feel free to register for that. Okay, we're going to go through 15 questions, so some stats, some clinical, some admin. That's free to attend. Okay, those of you that are planning to sit the exam in August, we have our AKT course, full day AKT course, 7-hour CPD, covers all 3 domains. We'll do 3 teaching mocks. You get a full mock afterwards, 200 question mock afterwards to go through online. That's on the 18th of July. The stats webinars, 21st July. Admin webinars, 22nd July, all the admin topics in one evening. High yield clinical, all the clinical topics examiners mentioned in their reports in the last 10 years. These things come up a lot, 23rd July. The AKT 200, where we do 4 50-question teaching mocks, making up a full 200 question mock on the 2nd of August, that's 8-hour CPD. And we've also got online revision with 1,700 questions, including a full mock. And then our clinical case cards, where you can revise, up-to-date topics. These are published in 2020, so they're up-to-date. You might have seen these. These are taken from places like Nice Cares, but they're really, really up-to-date. They're available up until the end of July. You can get those for $26.99 rather than $36.99, which will be the price from the 1st of July. Okay, and we do all of this together, actually, in one bundle. If that's how you feel about AKT, if you're just fed up of it, what the Pass Plus package does is that it puts a lot of these things together in one bundle, and it's available either online or in person. Okay, so again, I'll just show you on our website, AKT, the Pass Plus bundle. It's 110 hours, so you get the 2 full day courses, the main course on the AKT 200, all 3 webinars, plus we've got another 2-hour webinar to get you started at the beginning, which is an online recording, plus online access to the online revision questions and another full mock and the case cards, all as a bundle. So that's $695. If you put all these separately, it costs you over £900. But if you, sorry, if we just update that to 1, if you put in that code, I'm going to give you a code, lockdown 9, because today is the 9th lockdown. Put that in. That will be valid until midnight tomorrow. You get a further 15% discount. So that will knock off another more than £100. So you'd get it for even less. Okay, that will expire tomorrow. Okay, and that code you can also use for our RCA or RCA masterclass, our RCA course, our online revision. If you wanted to do individual webinars, online revision, anything. Okay. Right, so we're going to do neurology now. We're going to do 1 interactive case, and I'll build in 1 or 2 AKT style questions within this. And I want to talk about careers, a Q&A, okay, and then we'll finish, okay? So have a quick look. This is the patient we're going to be seeing, James Thatcher, 62 years old, and this is what we know about him, okay? So let's make a start. I'll put the chat back on. Okay, so I'll put the chat back on. Right, so I'm the patient, okay? This is a video consultation. So imagine now, let's say you're recording this for your recorded consultation assessment. Those of you in the early years, you're going to go back to CSA, okay? Imagine you're seeing this patient as a video consultation in CSA. I suspect they'll start introducing those, okay? So you've done the beginning, i.e. you've checked who I am, You've checked my date of birth and my address and where am I. You've done the ID check. All of that's done. Let's make a start on the actual consultation to save a bit of time. So what's the first question? Okay, so someone's asked, when did it start? When did what start, doctor? Someone's asked another question. Do you know why you're here today? Yeah, I'm here because my wife asked me to come, to be honest. She was complaining that my hand seemed a bit shaky. I wasn't that bothered by it, but she asked me to come, and I love her dearly. So I thought I'll do this video call. To be honest, this technology is a bit new for me. Okay. So someone said, how can I help today? Well, as I just said, my wife's asked me to speak to you, so I booked this video thing. I'm not really sure. Can you see me clearly? Yeah, okay. So is it one hand or both? It's both hands. Yeah, I have noticed it a little bit. It's not that bad, to be honest, but yeah, I think it bothers my wife more. How long for? I think probably, she said she noticed it 2 weeks ago for the first time. It's not always shaky. It's more when I'm just sitting there. If I'm doing stuff, like when I'm at work, I seem to be okay. It's not shaky then. How often do I notice it? Just like if I'm sitting down doing nothing. Yeah, so when I'm at rest, someone's asked, is it at rest or activity? When I'm at rest, so like if I'm just sitting there, like with my hand on my lap, it might be a bit shaky. But like if I'm at work and I'm doing stuff, it seems to be okay. Any family history of anything similar? Not that I know of, no. How's it affected me? Not that much, really. As I said, it's only really when I'm sitting doing nothing, which isn't often. I'm busy, Thankfully, now lockdown's easing up, I'm back to work, which is good because we need the income, really. Has my handwriting changed? Yes. I think that I find that a little bit more difficult, but again, I don't really write that much. But it is more when I'm just sitting there doing nothing. Okay. Someone asked, any family history of Parkinson's? Sorry, I don't know what that is. I've not heard of that before, Doc. Have I dropped anything from my hands? That's a great question. No, I've not. My strength's fine. As I said, when I'm at work, I can still do everything. So it's not affected. I'm not going to weakness or anything. Do I drive? Yeah, I drive to my different jobs. Yeah. What do I do for work? I'm a cleaner. So, I go into people's houses. So, like up until recently, I wasn't doing it. But now, people are a bit more willing to have me in, which is good because, they've got this government funding for people who are self-employed like myself. But it's taken a long time to come through. We still haven't got the first payment. Any other symptoms? Like what, doctor? Any palpitations? I'm not sure what that means, doctor. What's a palpitation? Do I feel hot or cold? No, it's hot today, but I don't feel hot or cold, no. Do I drink any alcohol? Yeah, I'll have the odd drink, maybe, once or twice a week, especially a hot day like this after work, go in the garden, might have one or two. Any dizziness? No, I've not felt dizzy, doc. Any visual problems? No, my sight's okay generally. I do get bad migraines. I've had those for years. So when I get a migraine, sometimes then I do find like the light hurts. So I just like lie down in a quiet room, and that helps to settle things. Any changes when I'm walking? I feel a little bit unsteady sometimes. Okay, but I've not had fall or anything like that. Okay. Do I take any medication? Yeah, so if I get a really bad migraine, I take that medication you prescribed, doctor, sumatriptan. So I take it as soon as it's starting. And generally, if I catch it as soon as it's starting, it will knock it on the head. Okay. Any difficulty getting up from the chair? Not that bad. I'm a bit slower. To get going, I found that it's a little bit slower. But once I get going, I'm okay. Does taking alcohol stop the shaking? Not really. Someone's asked a good question. How often do I take the sumatriptan? The last 2 weeks, I've actually had a few more headaches than usual. So usually I get probably 1 or 2 migraines in a month. The last couple of weeks, I've had a few more. And so, and because I was already not feeling that well anyway, okay, I did find that I was feeling quite sick with them. So I don't get dizzy, but I do feel sick a lot. So I had to get something for the sickness. Okay, so someone's asked a question, any meds? Yeah, so I just got over the counter. It's called Bucostem. I got it from the pharmacist. I told him, I explained that, I have migraines and that I was feeling a bit dizzy. So he said, oh yeah, this will help for that. So he gave me, it's called Bucostem. So I've been taking that actually. These last couple of weeks, I've been taking that quite a lot. For feeling sick, yeah. It's called Bucostem, the medication I got. Okay, right, good. I'm going to stop you guys there. Okay, I'll just stop the chat there now for a second. So let's have a quick look at some of the things that would be important to ask in the data gathering here. So, someone's presenting with tremor. You want to find out some of the things that you guys have already asked. So well done asking a lot of relevant questions. When did it start? Is it one side or is it both sides? Is it, at rest, or is it when we do things? Once you've started thinking about things like the fact that he also mentioned that he's a bit slow to get going, you want to get a bit more details about that. Okay, is that when we start to walk? Is it when you start to do something? Things like that. You could ask about things like if his wife mentioned that he doesn't seem to be as expressive in his facial movements, or if she's noticed that he doesn't blink as much. Difficulty with fine movements. So people asked about handwriting. That's a really good question. You asked about being unsteady. You could ask about, have you noticed that just walking generally has changed? Okay. Balance and fall. So he hadn't had any, but that's a good question to ask. Family history we asked about. That's really good. Something really important. Can they manage daily activities and what do they do for a job? That's really, really important, isn't it? Okay. So in terms of data gathering, some of the really important questions to make sure you don't miss the red flags. If they're managing activities or daily living or not, why? This will change your management. We'll come back to that later, okay? And then in terms of work, risk. So if someone, for example, operates heavy machinery, and then they're having struggles with fine movements, they might press the wrong button and that could put other people at risk. So that would be important. And asking about driving, that's also important, which we asked about. Some of the associated symptoms that you might want to think about asking about is things like sleep disturbance, changes in memory, changes in mood, and sense of smell, okay? So you might ask about some of these things. All right, and what about this? Have a look at this question. Right, so the most popular answer by a large margin is dabigatran, okay, but lots of people also picked sertraline, okay, and then every answer has been picked, but they were probably the two popular ones. So we're talking about which are the least likely. Again, I want to just focus a little bit on technique. This is what we call a negatively framed question. You don't get loads of these, but you get a few in the exam, okay? We're not asking which one might cause Parkinson-like symptoms, Parkinsonism, rather than Parkinson's disease, okay? We're asking which one is least likely, okay? So the correct answer is E, dabigatran. So well done, 60% of you got it right, but that doesn't mean 40% of people got it wrong, which is still a big percentage. So in terms of drugs that can cause Parkinsonism, okay, could it be drug induced? It's one of the things you want to think about. If someone's got new onset symptoms that fit with Parkinson's-like symptoms. So antipsychotics like haloperidol, olanzapine, these quite commonly cause it. Antiemetic, especially Bucostem, Stemetil, prochlorperazine, which you can buy over the counter, and metoclopramide, they often cause these symptoms. Some of these others, like methyl-dopa, cinnarizine, can cause it. And then these drugs can cause it, but less so than these. So like clozapine, third-generation antipsychotic, the SSRI, citalopram, fluoxetine, sertraline, paroxetine, these can all cause it. And then some of these other drugs like lithium, these can cause it, but not as often as these. And then the one on this list that was the right answer, dabigatran, just doesn't cause Parkinsonism-like symptoms. It's not listed at all as one of the side effects. Whereas these, you'll see, they are listed as causing these things, but less frequently, whereas these commonly cause it. Okay, so quite a challenging question. So now back to our patient. What would you like to examine? And can you do any of that remotely? Remember, this was a video call. If you had the patient in front of you, of course, there's lots of things you could do. But what could you do remotely? Is there anything you could do? Is there anything that you'd like to do, but therefore you're going to ask them to come in because you need to do it to make a diagnosis, for example? So again, I'll just open the chat up again. What could we do remotely? Is there anything? I'll just give you a few seconds to put that in. So people said about gait. We could do the get up and go test. Okay, that's useful to look at balance. Okay, we could do that. But yeah, so walking is a good example. And then also the rest tremor. Okay, so if you get them to sit back a little bit so that you can see, from a bit further, I'll stand up so you can see. But if they're sitting with their hands on their lap, you might see the rest tremor. Okay, you might see that. And then when they actually go to do something, it should settle down. And then yeah, get them to go back so that now you can see me, and ask them just to walk from a standing start. So standing still, what you'll see is they have difficulty in starting, and then slow shuffling gait, right? Okay, that's what you'll be looking for. You might be able to do a little bit of that there and then. Okay, that can be quite useful to do. A lot of the other things you can't do remotely, so you're going to have to bring them in so that you can examine them. Okay, so in terms of examination, some of the things I'd like to do, and therefore I'm going to ask them to come in, is looking for things like cogwheel rigidity. The resting tremor, you could ask them to do there. Ask them to put their hands, maybe put a piece of paper there while it's on rest to see if it shakes. The gait you could do probably from remotely. And then something that you could do if you bring them in is called the pull test. It's a test of postural instability. It's very useful for Parkinson's. So you get them to stand up. You would stand, imagine this chair is the person. So I'd stand with one hand behind and one hand sort of either on their shoulder or on their chest. Okay, usually I would use the shoulder, and you say to them, I'm just going to try to pull you back. Don't allow me to pull you back. And you just try to pull them back. And someone, imagine I'm the patient now, someone pulls back and they've got Parkinson's, they have postural instability. You pull back, they can't resist, and they go backwards. Someone that hasn't, you try and pull back, they resist and they stay where they are. This is called the pull test. Okay, it's quite useful test. So I'd bring them in for that. Okay, so let's see how we're going to manage them now. Okay. There we are, close it there. So the two that are very popular are F and G. So refer to be seen within 6 weeks and non-urgent referral. These were very, very popular. After that, it was C, refer to be seen within 7 days. Okay. So this patient fits with Parkinson's, doesn't it? Okay, the one we've just seen and this one here. The key thing is that he's still able to do his job. It's taking him a bit longer, but he's still managing his activities of daily living. There's nothing high risk about this patient. So what we do for this patient is refer to be seen within 6 weeks. Okay, so F is the right answer. So well done. About just under 30% of you got it right. That does mean that the vast majority of you got it wrong. Okay, so a couple of things to think about. When would you do same-day admission? Good example of that is if you thought someone had a stroke. When to be seen within 24 hours? TIA who had symptoms within the last 7 days. When within 7 days? TIA who had symptoms more than 7 days ago. Okay, when to be seen within 2 weeks? For a patient with suspected Parkinson's, someone who can't cope with their activities or daily living, or we think they're high risk, they're having lots of falls and they live alone and they can't manage, and so we think they've already got late disease, would do within 2 weeks. Okay, this patient, 6 weeks. All right. So we refer all patients with suspected Parkinson's to neurology or care of the elderly for a formal assessment. 2-week referral if they've got severe disease or late onset disease, i.e. they're not managing their activities of daily living, multiple falls, risky environment. 6-week referral for people with mild or early disease, coping with their activities of daily living. Do not start any anti-Parkinson's medication. So don't start things like methyl dopa, levodopa, dopamine. That's all started in secondary care. What we could do, This patient mentioned he's been recently taking a lot of prochlorperazine. That can cause Parkinsonism-like symptoms. So we could ask him to stop taking that, but you don't wait for that to see if stopping it improves things. You still refer within 6 weeks. The other thing that's important, we asked about driving, to advise him to contact the DVLA. So if he's driving a normal car or motorcycle, he'll fill in a form called PK1. If he was a Group 2 driver, someone that drives a bus or a lorry, then the form is called a PK1V, okay, for someone that drives vocationally, okay? So, drives for a living, that's their profession, that's their main job, driving lorries, buses, coaches, taxis, those kinds of things. Okay. So if you found that helpful, that's one case out of 100 on our CSA 100 case grammar videos. For each case, we look at the key things that you need to ask in data gathering, the red flags not to miss, how to do the examinations, what are the current guidelines for management, how you might explain things clearly. So these are just some of the 100 cases that are covered, okay? So you can get access to the video recording anywhere from 1 month to 12 months, and you can use that code lockdown9 to get a 15% discount, okay? So that's the second clinical topic. We're actually nearly at time, but I'm just going to spend 10 minutes to do the GP Careers Q&A, and then I'm going to tell you about things that are going to carry on, because I had quite a few people say that they really enjoyed and found helpful these lockdown webinars. I can't carry on doing them weekly because the amount of time it takes to prepare one and process the recording and get the booklet ready for you to send out the next day, a lot of time and effort goes into this. And now I'm back at work, full time now since I came back from paternity, with all of the other responsibilities, but also with things like health education in England. Have asked me to do some additional courses for them. I taught a course for qualified GPs going through the induction and refresher yesterday. So I'm just really, really busy the next few months. But also with the new cohort starting in August, our normal courses are going to start back up again. So, and thankfully, the whole point of lockdown learning was a lot of you had your teaching cancelled, and I didn't want you to miss out on learning during this important phase. And a lot of places now, you're back to having study leave, you're back to having teaching time. And so I'm grateful that that's happening, and it's great. So I can't do it weekly, but a lot of people have said they found it really helpful. So I think if you think it's been helpful and if you'd like me to carry on, if you're not interested, there's no point. I could rather have my evenings free and not spend days getting it ready. But what we could do is maybe do something once a month, like a national VTS once a month, and just carry on doing different topics if you're finding it helpful. So let me know in the chat if you think that would be useful, or if you'd like me to do something like that. And if you'd be willing to spread the word to other people in your training scheme, then it's worth doing if there's enough people to attend it. So anyway, put in the question and answer anything you want to ask about GP careers after qualifying, because that was the last session today. And we'll just spend 10 minutes on that. Just while people are putting those questions in, I'm just going to tell you about, for those that are going to head off, and those that are in ST3, or those of you that are already qualified, about our course coming up, not this weekend, next weekend. It's our CCT Plus course, Key Skills for Qualified GPs. Whether you're going to be a locum GP, a salaried GP, a GP partner, a portfolio GP, whether you want to develop a specialist interest, alternative careers like working with the police as a police surgeon, as a prison GP, on a cruise ship, working internationally in the Middle East, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or if you want to get into private general practice, all of these options will be covered. And we also will go through practical skills. So interview skills, what kind of questions, what kind of presentations you have to give in a partnership interview, how to compare different offers, how to understand the money side, how to negotiate your contract, okay? So a lot of the stuff that we cover here is just not covered anywhere else in this level of practical detail. So it's very, very skills-based. So, you'll learn how to find the right job for you, how to interpret job ads, and how to get shortlisted, how to do well in the interview, how to negotiate your contract, how to set your own terms and conditions and rates as a locum, whether it's worth being a limited company, self-employed, agency, how to evaluate a GP partnership and make sure you don't get conned for the buy-in, and understand. Some people, they don't understand the accounts. They end up earning less as a partner than they were earning as a salaried. How to compare a partnership offer to salaried and to salaried offers. How to maximize your income or take home pay for the same amount of hours of work. How to develop a portfolio career, a specialist interest, get started in private GP. And it's 4th of July. It's a full day live stream. Website links there. If you can't attend, there will be a video recording available for the same price a couple of weeks later. Again, if you use this same code, lockdown9, that will work on that course too, work on any of our courses, okay? So just go to emedica.co.uk, which is our main website, okay? And I'll just show you the careers site is here, okay? CCT Plus Maximize, so that's Saturday the 4th. But similarly, any of the AKT stuff, from our past guarantee bundle to individual webinars, and even online revision is there. The case cards you can also get from here, okay, at the bottom here, case cards. So you can see up until 5 days left, up until the 30th of June, you can get it for $26.99. The standard price is $36.99. So from 1st of July, it will go back to that. Okay, so you can use this discount for any of the courses or the webinars. Okay, it won't work on the cards because they already got a £10 discount on them. So anyone that hasn't got questions and you like to head off, I understand it's just gone 9 o'clock. I don't want to keep you behind. So let me just answer questions in the Q&A. I'll just turn the chat off so that well, I'll leave the chat in case anyone wants to say anything, but not for questions. Okay. So let's go through the careers Q&A, and then I'll do any questions about anything else at the end. Okay. So someone's asked, when would you suggest preparing for special interests of dermatology, and how would I go about it? That's a fantastic question. So you can start at any point. So we have a course for doctors that are about to start this weekend. It's our GPST Plus course to how to make the most of your rotation. So one of the things I say is, if you are interested in developing special interests, which you do after you qualify, in training you can make a head start. So for example, you could use some of your study leave to go on a dermatology course and learn some practical skills. You could use some of your self-directed learning time, when you're in your GP rotations. You get one afternoon a week, don't you, where you can go and do other things. I'd go and talk to a local consultant dermatologist and say, I'm really interested in doing this as a special interest later. Could I come and sit in a clinic maybe one afternoon a week for 6-8 weeks to just get some exposure? And often they'll be happy to host you. Maybe you could think about, after you qualify, doing a postgraduate certificate or diploma so that you get the skills base and then develop it. And then it's probably going to take 2 or 3 years at least after qualification before you can actually become a GP with specialist interest. But you see, you could make a head start, but maybe starting to gain some of the skills during training and getting exposure and see how you feel about it. Okay, so that's a great question. I hope that's helpful. Someone's asked, how many sessions are a must to qualify for end of year appraisal? So I'm guessing you mean once you qualify. Once you qualify, technically you only need to do 1 session a year to stay on the performers list. But to keep up to date with appraisal, generally, if you're doing 40 sessions a year, so 40 half days a year or less, you have to write why and how you're staying up to date and staying current with your clinical practice by doing that little practice. So generally, if you want to avoid having to do that and having to write an essay and so on, generally you want to be doing 40 or more sessions a year. Less than that, and they start asking questions. Okay. So someone's asked, how does a qualified GP keep updated? The same way that you guys keep updated, except that you have to be a little bit more self-motivated, because you have organized teaching through your program directors, right? So when you're qualified, you need to seek out your own teaching and training opportunities. So go on courses, go on an update course, go on a conference, go on courses that you're in, specialties that you're interested in. You could also do things like, you might find that your area, your health board or commissioning group might have training for qualified GP. So, in some areas, a lot of practices shut down one day, one afternoon every month. They hire out-of-hours company to cover the phone calls, and then all the GPs meet and they invite speakers, different consultants or different GPs to come and talk. Where I am in Birmingham and Solihull, we have our own informal group where a group of us get together once every couple of months. It's not been happening in lockdown, but once every couple of months, we'll invite someone to come and speak. We meet at a different restaurant each month. We invite someone to come and speak for about an hour, a consultant on a topic we're interested in. And then we discuss any interesting cases from our different practices. And then we will have a nice dinner. And, I can't go to all of them, but I try to go to 3 or 4 a year, an hour, hour and a half CPD each time. But more importantly, it's a nice way to network and keep up to date with colleagues and friends in the locality. So things like that, online learning, e-learning, things like that. So I'm just going to answer the careers question, and I'll come back to everything else in a second, okay? So just because someone said, how does a qualified GP keep motivated? Find a job that you love, okay? And then you'll never feel like you worked a day. Someone asked earlier, how do I stay happy? How do I always maintain a smile? I love what I do. I love my job. I love teaching. I love seeing patients. I love spending time with my family. I love doing the things that I like doing. If you find things that you love, like there's a lot of people, they're asking about work-life balance, but what they mean by that is how can they minimize their work? If you hate your job so much that all you can look at is thinking, how can I minimize your work? I've got some really bad news. You're just in the wrong job. Maybe you need to leave and find a different job. That might be the actual job itself, but often it's the environment. It might be that it's that workplace and you worked in a different place with a different group of people doing the same job, you'd be really happy. Okay, so find a workplace where you're valued, find work that you are passionate about, that you love, that you feel fulfilled in, and then find things outside of medicine that you love, that give you a purpose and a motivation. Work hard, play hard, and then that's how you stay motivated. Okay, so thank you very much. Someone just said that they're actually 7 years post qualifying, but they've been attending these sessions and found it really, really helpful. So they hope to keep going. So thank you. That's really, really useful. I will definitely bear that in mind. So someone says, when you say 40 plus sessions, what do you mean? So a session's a half a day. Okay, so at least 40 half days a year. Okay. Someone's asked what diplomas are paid for from deaneries. None. I don't know of any diplomas that a deanery will pay for. Sometimes, once you're qualified, your practice might pay for a diploma if they feel that you're then going to use that diploma in a way that's going to bring income into the practice. They might support giving you some time off or contribute some funds towards it. Okay. And then someone's asked about, as a salaried GP, what annual leave rights do salaried GPs have? Okay, so that depends on your contract. So if you're getting the terms of the BMA model contract, and that's one of the things we'll cover in this CCT Plus course, we'll cover in detail how to negotiate your contract and what's in the BMA model contract, but you're entitled to 32 days of annual leave plus bank holidays, okay? So that is 6 weeks and 2 days of annual leave plus bank holidays. Most people don't get the 2 days. Most people get 6 weeks. Some people get less than that. So if you feel that you're not getting and you're not happy with it, that's why it's so important to negotiate your contract and agree it before you agree a start date. Once you've started, it's very difficult to change these things. And that's why the negotiation process and the skills of negotiation are really, really important. Okay. So, if you're something that you find difficult, please do attend, because we will cover that skill of how to negotiate your contract. Okay. How to negotiate your salary contract, either before or after. If you want to pay rise, for example, how do you negotiate changes in terms and things like that? That's one of the things we'll actually do practical exercise on. So that's on the 4th of July, full day. So please do attend. Good. Right. So I think that's all of the questions I can see in the Q&A that are for the careers, which is what we were talking about. So just before we go, for those that haven't got any questions, do join the GP Training Support Group. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to get further videos. And if people tell me in the feedback, I'll send out a request for feedback later this evening. If you tell me that you think it'd be worth carrying on and you're interested in, tell me what topics you'd like for future ones. Maybe we'll carry on hosting a monthly one. Okay. For anyone leaving, just to let you know that, remember this from Malcolm X: the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. The fact that you're coming to something like this, giving up part of your evening to learn things that are going to help you for your future. Some of you, I know, haven't even started training or are in ST1 and you're not going to do these exams for a year. The fact that you're thinking so far ahead, I think that's fantastic. It means that you're going to know exactly what to do, what to avoid. You'll, be well ahead of the game. Okay. So, keep going, keep pushing, because as we say at eMedica, that if you prepare, you will succeed, right? That's what we say. That's our logo. Prepare and you will succeed in anything in life, right? Okay, so thank you very much for all of you that have joined every webinar, and those of you that have joined one or two, or those coming for the first time.